Tommy Robinson, it's not even his real name. Again, he's as fake as Israel is. But he is the guy who did organize this rally, and he's had quite a bit of backers that have been quite a bit of financial backers, I should say, that has the wind at his back. And I am not going to say that this was not a big event. It 1,000% was. He brought a lot of people there. And this is what Tommy had to say, as at least, I would say, a couple 100,000 people lined the streets for the event, what would have been about 3 or 4 hours ago in London.
This is the biggest demonstration in British history. Britain has finally awoken. We've been waiting decades. They've had everyone scared. The British public are scared no more. This is never going away. Okay? Patriotism is the future. Borders are the future. We want our future.
So as you can see, there are a lot of the Union Jack flags, the St. George Christian flags. This was I was actually in a play when I was a kid, and I played St. George, so that flag holds certain memories for me. What I will say is that right now, Nigel Farage, who is making a political comeback, no surprise, he is the leader of the Reform UK Party. The irony of that name, but the Reform UK Party evidently is leading in the polls. They are way ahead of the competition right now. And Tommy Robinson has been perhaps the face, if you're looking for a face of white nationalism, that's it. Tommy Robinson, 1,000%. And again, that's not his real name. For those of you who are not familiar, his real name is Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon. No relation to John Lennon, as far as I know. But this guy has garnered quite the following. He, without question, and for anybody who's a Brit, and maybe H.G. Wells can explain this, I'm not too familiar with Katie Hopkins, so if anybody wants to explain exactly who this lady is and what she stands for, I'm not entirely sure. But she was at Tommy's side the entire time. Never left his side. So I am curious. I don't see her as his significant other, but certainly a confidant that was at this particular event. It does seem that is the impetus of this particular rally. That as much as it was deemed an anti-immigrant rally, what it really was an anti-Muslim rally. There is a great deal of concern, particularly amongst, listen, it was a predominantly white crowd. Sure, I saw some diversity in the crowd, if that even counts for anything, but there is no question that this is a great concern amongst the white populace of the United Kingdom, predominantly in England, that does not like the exceptionally high amount of Muslim migrants that have been relocating to the UK. And if your concern is truly about whether or not your country becomes infiltrated, I would ask, why is it that you're having this issue? Why is it that so many people coming into your nation, and whether you want to say they're browning it or they are changing the language, possibly some customs, I'd like to know why, because at this particular event, it should come as no surprise to anybody, there's a lot of different groups that you can highlight that were there today. But if there is one that I think deserves it the most, it's this group. Now, I know this is a little bit of a blurry image. disturbing image. I thought this was a Unite the Kingdom rally, not the Unite Behind Israel rally, but it does seem that quite a few of the Zion-Nazis found their way into this event. If you support the United Kingdom and you support a reduction or a significant drawback on immigration, again, that's your policy. That's your decision. I know there are people who say, how could you feel that way? Well, you know what? The polls in the United Kingdom show Nigel Farage in a very comfortable lead right now in the polls. So clearly, whatever they're doing is clearly of great concern to them. But what isn't being discussed is, why is this happening? Those people waving those flags, they have a lot to do with this. The Israelis have a lot to do with why this has become a problem. No one wants to talk about that now, do they? But Tommy Robinson has wrapped himself in that Israel flag as tight as humanly possible. There is nothing he will not say or do to support the Israel cause. Now, one would be asking themselves, why is that? Is it truly that he has been on an anti-Palestinian crusade since October 7th, 2023, because he genuinely cares about the Jewish people or the Israeli people? I would venture to guess that the answer is no, that isn't the case. He doesn't give a flying F whatsoever. And the reason I feel this way, and the reason I believe a lot of you would probably feel this way, is because, again, our job on our channel is to bring you as much informative details on critical issues as possible. What a lot of people may not know, and yes, you should follow the shekels. That's exactly what happened here. Tommy Robinson is funded by the genocidal state of so-called Israel. And I think we should get into the habit of referring to them as the so-called state of Israel, because they're not really a state. But I digress. This should be enlightening for most of you.
Links Israel with the instigators of recent racist violence in the UK. The answer lies in a global network of anti-Muslim and pro-Israel politicians, think tanks and philanthropists, which have been funding and promoting the UK's lead.
That's Tommy Robinson. I don't know about you, but if you're rocking the IDF shirt, kind of like Congressman Brian Mast did on the congressional floor, I'd say that that's pretty messed up. Again, I'm being very generous with my language here right now. Maybe I'm mellowing out somewhat. We'll see how the night goes along. There is no question that in almost every instance that we are now seeing, if there is a prominent voice, no matter where they are, it could be here in the United States, it could be in the UK, which is pretty much the only two places that of considerable note at this point. I know that there's some stuff going on in South Korea. We haven't addressed that yet. Maybe we will on Monday. Most, if not all, of the people that are supporting the genocidal state of Israel are doing so for monetary gain. I think it's safe to say most would agree that that is the case.
Leading far-right figures.
Put them on boats and send them back. They have to rise up to defend their families.
So who are these figures? The most notorious is Tommy Robinson. Robinson is the former leader of the English Defence League, an openly racist, anti-Muslim and anti-migrant movement. The EDL effectively disbanded in 2013, but the movement continued around the actions of Tommy Robinson, his court appearances, imprisonment and mobilising people against migrants and Muslims. His most recent rally, which included many Israel supporters, pulled a crowd of around 20,000 people in London just days before the riot started. Misinformation spread across far-right social media accounts sparked the violence. They falsely named the culprit in an appalling stabbing attack on children in northern England on the 29th of July as a Muslim.
His name is Ali Al-Kati, a very Welsh-sounding name.
It later turned out he was a UK-born Christian with Rwandan heritage. Far-right protesters hijacked a vigil for the dead children, and mobilized a mob to attack a mosque. The violence then spread across the UK and included racist attacks on Muslims, Asian Britons, Black Britons, and asylum hotels.
Now, I would ask if anybody is in the United Kingdom right now, and I would take it a step further, and if you actually do support Tommy Robinson and this nationalist movement, I would be inclined to at least listen as to what your rationale is. If it's a question of it just being race, there is no excuse for that. Zero. If you're going to tell me that your reasoning is that the assimilation of the migrants that are coming is causing difficulties amongst the people, it is at least worth listening to. But as I said, why is it happening? Why is it that migrants are coming to your country that are not able to assimilate or do not have any money or are desperate to survive? Why are they there? Well, a big part of it is the Greater Israel Project. And I doubt Tommy Robinson is going to say one word about that. You know why? Because he's being paid by them a lot of money. That's how these organizations grow. When you have as much money as humanly possible, which Israel, I mean, I'm not going to say they have it anymore. Clearly, a lot has changed. But when they have been able to ostensibly buy off as many people as possible to push their narrative, eventually they kind of get desperate and they end up working in conjunction with people like Tommy Robinson, who is unabashedly white nationalist, very proud too. And there are a lot of people who turn to this nationalism when they fear that their culture, not necessarily color, but especially culture, is being taken away from them. So it is always important to understand how people end up supporting somebody like Tommy Robinson, and understanding that, again, I should not even call him Tommy Robinson because it's not even his real name. Again, he's just like Israel. He's as fake as Israel. He doesn't even go by his real name. And so his level of, again, leadership in these circumstances, it's violent, it's angry, and it's only going to get worse.
But Robinson's links to Israel go much deeper than flags at his rallies. Robinson has long considered himself a Zionist.
I notice you're wearing a shirt or a button that says "I am a Zionist." What's a Zionist?
Well, a Zionist, someone believes in a homeland for Jewish people.
The English Defence League had a Jewish division run by former IDF soldier Roberta Moore, which later named itself the Jewish Defence League after a Jewish terror group and used the logo of another terror group, the Zionist movement. Robinson was, and possibly still is, funded by pro-Israel anti-Muslim organizations based out of the US. One source of funds, according to a Guardian investigation, is tech billionaire Robert Shillman, who, until recently, was a director of the Friends of the Israeli Defense Forces.
This is one of the things that we talk about constantly when people talk about, powerful Jewish people in high places. Again, Jewish Zionists in high places, wealthy, connected, powerful individuals like this Shillman, a very appropriate name, Shill, is funding these guys. He's funding them. As a friend of the show from the UK just pointed out, he's over there. Tommy's movement is small, relatively speaking, but he's well funded. And when you're well funded, you can get a couple of 100,000 people in the streets on a Saturday in the UK. Elon Musk made an appearance at the rally. He put out his message. Elon's actually been extremely volatile over the last 72 hours. I do believe he was friendly with Charlie Kirk, and so for him, this is a serious personal vendetta that he's taking on, saying it's the left. Like I said, we're going to get to Tyler Robinson eventually. But in the meantime, we'll deal with Tommy Robinson further.
Funded Dutch extreme right politician Geert Wilders and funds journalism at the far-right news outlet Rebel Media. The Times of London spoke to a former colleague of Robinson, Lucy Brown, who said Shillman paid $11,000 a month for him to work there.
Imagine that. One guy paying Tommy Robinson £11,000 to work at a news outlet, Rebel Force, that, again, how many people would line up to make £11,000 a month, which is the equivalent, I believe, would be the equivalent to about 13,000 US dollars a month? Might be 14,000. It's a decent amount of money. Actually, it's a lot of money. It's the equivalent of probably about $150,000 a year. It's a lot of money. So to say that there are people who will love Rebel Media. So Rebel Media gets, but hey, thank you for calling me a clown. At least I was able to get the information I needed. So thank you for that. Rebel Media was paying through a Jewish Zionist, Mr. Shillman, again, perfect name, Shillman, was paying Tommy Robinson £11,000 a month to shill for Israel. You think he's the only one? There are hundreds. There's plenty of people out there with their hands out willing to do this work. And even if you don't agree with it, and I believe many people didn't, including Charlie Kirk, it pays extremely well. And it's very difficult for even the most well-intentioned of people to turn that type of money down, especially if they need it. So that's how they hook them. But Tommy was ready, willing, and able. Therein lies the rub.
What is far right about my views? That's all I want to know.
Rebel Media journalists have also got money from another pro-Israel organization called the Middle East Forum. The MEF paid $60,000 for Robinson's legal fees after he was arrested for contempt of court in 2018 and organized a far-right rally for him in London. The director of this organization is Greg Roman, a former Israeli government employee and once the coordinator of activities in the West Bank for Israel's Department of Defense. He told the Middle East Monitor in an email that MEF regrets funding the events supporting Mr. a former Israeli government employee and once the coordinator of activities in the West Bank for Israel's Department of Defense. He told the
Now, I believe this may have been clipped from earlier today, but you can see that the crowd is pretty big. There's a lot of people that showed up to this event. Now, clearly, those that are in Conservative Inc., as it is known, they exaggerated how many people were actually at this rally today. What a surprise. Well, we know where they get the exaggeration from. Again, a lot of people were there. I'm not going to say that they weren't. It definitely drew a large crowd, but you have people suggesting that there were anywhere from 1 million to 3 million people that showed up there today. Again, that's not the case. When there was the Free Palestine rally in Washington, D.C., I want to say like a year and a half ago, that drew about 1 million people. Legitimately. That's what 1 million people looks like. There were a lot of people there for sure, but that's not anywhere near the amount that they're saying that it was. But again, as one of our friends from the UK in the chat did say, there is a propensity when you have a considerably volatile ideology that you're trying to push to make it seem like it's much bigger than it really is. That's not to say that there aren't a lot of people in the UK who are becoming extremely anti-migrant right now. That is a very fair statement to say. And again, it is reflective in the polls because Nigel Farage is leading the way in the polls. So that does matter.
Middle East Monitor in an email that MEF regrets funding the event supporting Mr. Robinson, and despite many articles in support of Mr. Robinson remaining on their website, they have supposedly cut all ties with him. Robinson traveled to Israel in 2016 on a guided tour that saw him pose on an Israeli tank with a gun, wear an IDF t-shirt in the West Bank, and even visit a Bethlehem refugee camp.
I was very nervous when we were going into a Palestinian refugee camp. I hugely benefited from walking around that camp.
Despite this humbling experience, he more recently called Palestine a shithole full of inbred Islamist parasites and terrorists.
You have to believe that those statements that Tommy is making in general probably is what he believes, but even if it isn't what he believes, he is definitely being paid handsomely to say just that.
Above a poster saying, F Palestine. Rebel Media, according to a former employee, Lauren Southern, took their staff on guided tours of Israel. Southern was fired because she questioned the need to fundraise for a state-sponsored trip.
It became pretty obvious that this was a guided tour, not a fact-finding mission.
Another figure of the British far right, Katie Hopkins, who was one of the key figures along with Robinson that contributed to starting the riots, was one of those taken by Rebel Media on a sponsored trip to Israel.
All I can hear is the call to prayer. I feel like I'm being tortured in a cell by Al-Qaeda.
Let me tell you, it's going to get a lot harder going forward for even the most committed of grifters, Brandon Tatum, to just go along with this. At this point, the level of desperation on Milikowski's part and everyone within the Zionist movement, they don't have mainstream regular people espousing the pro-Israel narrative. I mean, look around, guys. I mean, where do you really see it? Sky News in Australia? It doesn't really exist. So they have to buy off guys like Tommy Robinson, who are all too eager to take as much filthy money as they get their hands on, because they're just filthy people to begin with. They're angry, resentful, and don't really hold any honest ideology. Again, if the real concern is about the issues that exist, you would find yourself being much more concerned about issues like healthcare, the economy, education, the environment, and especially foreign policy. And if that's not your concern, if you are not centered on that fact, and all you want to do is just point the finger at the brown people coming into your country, not asking why the brown people are coming into your country, you've already lost, and you will continue to lose. And even if it's temporary that you might gain support, it doesn't mean anything. It's so fucking pointless, and it makes you so much less productive in the world. You really have to ask yourself, why harbor so much for people that have so little? And cave so easily for those that have it all. You should have seen the way that people were trying to slurp off of Elon at the event today. I'm not going to play him because it's not worth it. And so I do think that that is of considerable importance here.
Hopkins is an extreme right personality and shock jock known for calling migrants cockroaches and vermin in national newspapers, and has been using her social media accounts of 2 million plus followers to help spread misinformation and mobilize the racist marchers. Her video, falsely giving an Arab-sounding name to the Southport child killer, is still online. Hopkins loves Israel. She launched her conspiracy-laden documentary there. She gives regular talks, meets with Israeli officials, and pro-Israel groups love her. Like Robinson, she was a Shillman Fellow at Rebel Media, financed by Robert Shillman.
Okay, just the fact that she dressed up in that hijab, which clearly was done for shock value, is beyond disgusting. No respect whatsoever for the culture. Again, when does a non-Muslim wear the garb? When you enter a mosque. As far as I could tell, she's not in there. She's out in public. I don't know if, again, she's doing this for shock value or to cause trouble. Whatever her reasoning is, it's pretty disgusting. And this is the person that was arm in arm with Tommy Robinson at the rally this afternoon.
The tech billionaire, and run through another anti-Muslim group, according to Vice News, called the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Katie is a regular speaker at their events, paid to deliver humorously racist after-dinner speeches and spew anti-Muslim hate.
Unlike my Muslim friends who have 15 under the age of 3. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I don't have any Muslim friends.
So why?
Well, she's telling the truth about both, I guess. Honestly, people like that don't even bother me. I just laugh at them and I pity them. They're very weak people, extremely weak.
Are most of the far-right leaders in not only Britain but around Europe supporting Israel? Robinson started out in the British National Party, the successor to the National Front. Both were deeply anti-Semitic and racist movements, but more closely aligned with mid-20th century fascist ideologies like Nazism. And now anti-Muslim and anti-migrant hate is the primary agenda of these groups. Their Islamophobia has made them natural allies of other supremacist ideologies like Zionism in Israel or Hindu nationalism in India. So the war in Gaza, an occupation of Palestine, and the recent wave of racist violence in the UK are connected by a network of pro-Israel and anti-Muslim organizations who are promoting hate against Muslims in Britain while supporting the ethnic cleansing and military occupation of Muslims in Palestine.
So there you have it. Tommy Robinson does a rally today, and without question, it was a big rally, and a lot of people show up. There were, again, very angry, resentful people that were there and feel that they are losing their country. But keep in mind, that is why this is such a big issue. He's getting the support from the Israel lobby, from the wealthy class, much as our chat has pointed out. Guys, we have 731 people currently watching, but only 237 of you have hit that like button. If you would be so kind, it doesn't cost a dime. We really appreciate your support. If you could smash that like button, maybe we could get to 1,000 live stream viewers tonight. So what do you say? Smash that like button for us. We really appreciate it. I think Tommy Robinson is going to continue to have an effect. I think there's a lot of people in the UK that are dealing with a different issue regarding immigration than we are here in the States, but perhaps there's similarities. I can't say for certain. What I do know is that there are a lot of scared people in this world right now, and they don't really know which way things are going. And so naturally the inclination is to lash out at people that they can hit. You see, we often talk about whether people are punching down versus punching up. It is a lot easier to target. Again, I'm not here to tell somebody how they should, how they do their own house cleaning in their own country. Like I said, in the United Kingdom right now, it is obvious that the Reform UK Party, led by Nigel Farage in conjunction with Tommy Robinson, is what is cooking in the polls. And so there's a reason why so many people showed up today. But there are way too many people who are ignoring the reality of why, if you want to call it a migrant crisis that the UK is having, what is responsible for that? Who is responsible for that? State of Israel and their cohorts. They have a lot to do with this.